We pledge to say it like it really is.
With dignity and respect.
Committed to free speech and common sense.
Upbeat and entertaining.
Straight talking and direct.
We may agitate each other and you.
Heartfelt and passionate.
Thought-provoking, provocative and controversial.
Fearless and truthful.
Hello and welcome to The Pledge, the most surprising debate show on TV. So, Downing Street has insisted that their negotiating strategy for Brexit isn't have cake and eat it, after this photograph of an aide's notes was released. Well, here are my notes, Nick. On today's show, June wants us all to pay attention to our breathing. Nick's going to be ruder than Nigel Farage. Greg's got a cunning plan to save the NHS. And Michelle's going to be reminiscing about her days as a checkout girl. Yes. But first, it's me. Now, I think I'm a winner. I think I understand what it takes to win. And I hope my football record speaks for itself. That's me on the right with the suit, by the way. I was actually injured for that final, all right? Otherwise, I would have played. But I don't believe in winning at all cost. In the last race of the Formula One season, Lewis Hamilton repeatedly ignored team orders from Mercedes. The only way he could still win the Drivers' Championship was for his teammate Nico Rosberg to come fourth. So he backed him up, hoping that other cars would overtake. Here's the team radio between Lewis and the Mercedes technical director, Paddy Lowe.
Lewis, this is Paddy. We need you to pick up the pace to win this race. That's the instruction.
I'm actually in the lead right now. I'm quite comfortable. Right now, I'm losing the World Championship, so I'm not really bothered if I win or lose this race.
Now, even though what Lewis did was within the rules, to me, it's not in the true spirit of sport. As a sportsman or sportswoman, you should try to do your best, not try to make others fail. You might end up with the medal, but if you win at all cost, the big loser is sport.
There's an expression, Graham, in Australia, which is winners are grinners. And I think that probably... winners are grinners, mate. And that probably speaks to how they take sport, because by and large, they probably go into in a more aggressive tone and a more aggressive stance. I have a concern about team orders, I'll give you that. But let me ask you this, actually. Let me start with a question. You're back in... And you're right, you were a winner, and you had a tremendous career. It's 0-0 in the World Cup final against Germany, right, with a minute to go. And for some extraordinary reason, you're actually playing an attack. They've actually let you into their half. You go into the penalty box and you're given a bit of a nudge, and it's a 50-50. But you know if you throw yourself down to the ground like a granny on an icy morning, you're going to get that penalty. You're going to get that penalty.
Yeah.
Well, well, thank you for your candour. So doesn't that speak to... I hear about team orders, because actually, I think in these instances, these young men are being paid like tens of millions of pounds. And that's the point, I think, that Niki Lauda, who's a very famous driver, is being made. You're paid 20 or 30 million quid. You pretty much do as you're told. I think racing drivers are a strange breed in that their lives really... I mean, I know you can get bad injuries in your game and rugby players can get bad knocks, but those guys' lives really are on the line. They're a very strange... Because one of my sons is actually in motor racing, so not at that level, but BTCC, which is quite a big level. So they're very fixed blokes. So to sum it up, you would do it if it were get England. The fans would expect you to do it. I'd expect you to do it if it wins the World Cup. So... I hear with team orders, but winners are grinners, mate. But
I think the description or the example you've given in that situation, a football context, is different. If I'm honest, I think within a team, a football team or a rugby team, when you're working against another team. You still have the components within that team that all have to work together. So I have to sacrifice certain things as a player to my team in order for us to be successful. A striker, you could say, is a bit more selfish. They take a shot when maybe the pass is on, because 3 out of 5 they might score, a good striker. So Alan Shearer, who I played with for many years, I would say, you know, he had to have a more selfish attitude than me, who was a provider. But ultimately, if he only ever thought of himself and never thought about anybody else, then that would damage our success. And for motor racing, where it's slightly different, you've got a team but individuals. And actually, if you...
Are you there to win or compete?
No, but you're there...
Are you there to win or compete?
You're there to win, of course.
Thank you.
Yeah, but when you... But there's different ways of winning, that's my point.
But surely, that motor racing is an individual sport. You have a backup team, but it's not a team sport.
Yeah.
You are out there to win. Hamilton worked out that the only way he could become world champion was if he slowed the race down so someone could overtake from behind. Right? That's what he wanted to do.
Yep.
He was exactly right. I mean, do you remember when Ben Ainsley won? I remember being in Sydney watching Ben Ainsley, the sailor, win by blocking the Brazilian. So I think Ainsley came 64th and the Brazilian came 65th. But wherever the Brazilian went, he blocked him off. Right? That's what it is. It's about winning. It's not. This isn't winning at any cost. This is winning. This is his attempt to become world champion.
But it is winning at any cost in the sense that he's damaged the values that have been placed on them by the team, which is Mercedes. So another sport is cycling that's comparable. So there's 4 or 5 cyclists that protect the guy that they believe has the best chance of winning the Tour de France, for instance. Now, if one of those guys did what Lewis Hamilton did, which was when actually I'm doing quite well in the Tour de France, so I'm going to break the team because I think I can win.
No, but Lewis was the guy, though, wasn't it? In this instance, Lewis is the guy that's the one that could win the thing.
Well, no, because, in this situation, it was Rosberg who was the guy, and Lewis had to make a decision whether he did what the team instructed, which is to do the best you can, be a winner,
was basically
absolutely.
to let Rosberg win. That's not that race, but win the championship. That's what they were telling him, and both of them were in their cars. And I fully understand Lewis Hamilton saying, I'm not doing that. I'm going to do it so that I can try to win. And the only way I can win is slow this race down so the others overtake him.
But that's to the cost of the team and the values of the place. Because they are a team. They both drive for Mercedes.
Mercedes had already won the team championship.
Constructors, yeah.
So you would
also, if Lewis wins, the team is still there. What's the point? What's the problem? It's still a Mercedes driver that's won.
Let's have a quick look at what Hamilton said about it.
Fine.
There's no point just sitting up front, leading the Grand Prix and coming in second. I had to try and help myself.
Do you think they might be pulling you into the office and going, we said a few things and you didn't listen to us?
I'm looking forward to it.
But yeah, you sound like you got some answers all ready for it.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, I said earlier on, show me a good loser and I'll show you a loser, and you don't want to.
Well, I mean, I won today, so I don't feel...
Yeah, no, you had to try to do something to destabilise his race.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I did everything with the opportunities that I had.
I agree entirely with Hamilton.
100%.
He was trying to be the world champion.
Yep.
I agree.
He could only be the world champion if he slows the race down and somebody overtake Rosberg. And there's also been this suggestion that, it's a German car, a German team, and he's a German driver.
Yeah.
And that maybe they hadn't protected Hamilton during the season. He'd had 2 or 3 really races where the car didn't run properly. I'm all in favour. If they really think he shouldn't do it, then they should get rid of him.
Yeah.
Absolutely, but that's the consequence. And I'm not saying that they've got an opportunity to do one of 2 things. Either they have a chat with him and remind him of the values that they've set, or they cut him loose.
I don't think this was about values.
No, but it was.
What was the team? Why were their team telling him to stop doing it? They were telling him to stop doing it because they were going to win either way.
Yes.
Either driver. It didn't matter to them. It did matter to Hamilton. And that's what it is. And if you can't be the world motor racing champion unless you're prepared to be pretty ruthless...
But he was specifically told, wasn't he, don't do that. The actual quote was, this is an instruction, change what you're doing. And he completely disregarded that instruction. And I think I can see all sides of this. But for me, it's like if you are in a team environment and essentially the boss of that team or one of the leaders of that team tells you, do this, it's an instruction... To me, it's almost like an egotistical thing to overrule that instruction and just do what you want anyway.
You want to be the world champion.
Yeah, but listen, he was winning the race anyway. He could have won it by a country mile.
Yes,
the race.
He's after champion.
So the winning mentality is there.
But if he went faster,
it
made it less likely that he was going to be the world champion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was
trying to
slower. As the commentator said, he was trying to destabilise the race.
He did try to destabilise it, and it didn't work because Rosberg still won.
Right, but are you saying destabilising is a word you'd use on the basis of creating a team effort?
I just say it's no different. You see it in lots of individual sports. In team sports, it's much more difficult.
And I don't think this really is a team sport. This isn't rugby or football where everybody's playing for the same outcome and you all have the same agenda. This really is an individual sport that's kind of under the banner of a team sport, but it isn't.
So
and also the difference is Mercedes as a team is always going to be there. Lewis has a shelf life, so he better win as much as he can for as long as he can. So I'm totally in favour of him, and I agree with Nick and Greg on this one.
We joked about football earlier in our conversation. There's something happening in the world of football where there's absolutely no humour whatsoever, but we do need to touch on it, not least because you're a player, and Greg, you held a very senior position at the FA. The current chairman, Greg Clark, has said this is the biggest crisis he's ever seen football face with this paedophile coach scandal.
God.
Is he right? How accurate is he?
I'm not in a position to judge whether it's the biggest crisis. I can say in the 3 years that I was chairman of the FA, while we discussed safeguarding quite a lot about none of this ever emerged. So you were not aware of this. And if you look back in the history of this, I'm not sure you're talking about the period we're in now. I think you're talking about a period 20 years ago. Yeah. And if you remember, there was a big scandal in swimming in the mid-90s. And that led to a whole new set of systems being put in place. I mean, I've got some figures just out of interest. I mean, at the FA now, there is a network of 8,500 people as designated safeguarding officers. There's 55,000 criminal records who are checked every year. There's 35,000 coaches and referees attend the FA's Safeguarding Children Awareness course each season. Now, that is all, I say comparatively new. That's all of the last 15 to 20 years.
So what does the FA need to do now?
I think the FA needs to do what they've done, which is they need to have an investigation to say, was stuff pushed under the carpet 20 years ago? And are our systems... There's never a problem about checking your systems again to make sure they're as effective as they can.
From my point
it
of
isn't
view,
to say they're not still going to be some people who get through this.
I want to ask you, you're a similar generation. Of
so we're talking 30 years ago, really.
These
absolutely.
Poor blokes are coming forward now.
From my point of view, the most frightening aspect of this, from my own sort of involvement with football, is that I never heard anything. You never heard anybody saying that there were rumours about a particular coach, and I just think it goes to show these guys that have been, as you rightly say, the brave guys that have actually came out and made this sort of change of I suppose environment for other people to feel safe to come out. I just think it shows how difficult it was for them, how they didn't feel there was any support for them. I mean, we're up to nearly 900 people contacting the NSPCC.
Three times the level of calls on Saturday. And you wrote a piece about the culture of the dressing room. I would imagine, obviously, you're the only one of us who's been in there.
Yeah.
It's presumably very macho and very difficult for a lad to come forward and say, because the coach holds that lad's career in his hands, doesn't he?
That's
he
right.
can either make or break the kid.
Yeah, I did a piece.
Suddenly say,
I did a piece in The Guardian about it, and just that whole hierarchy and that respect for authority. And anybody that's played sport, when you're young, you see the coach, and they've got all the power.
Who would you report it to in that instance?
Well, there was no one then.
That
was the problem, was that there was nobody that you could talk to, because I think it was a generational thing as well. You respected adults, you didn't dare challenge authority. From my point of view, the coach, any coach, was somebody that you had to buy into what they were telling you, because they're the ones that could make you better. And therefore, they had all the power. So with that power comes an incredible responsibility. You know, for me, I was coming over.
You've run through walls for your coach.
Absolutely.
You wrote that in your piece.
And you know, for me, I was coming over from Jersey to England with various clubs and whatever. You're in an environment where you are vulnerable, and the protections clearly weren't there. And if anything had happened to anyone, as we're finding out now, there was nowhere for them to report that. No. It was actually reinforced by the environment to not say anything, and that's why it's taken 30 years for these guys to actually step up. And I just hope now we have an openness in the game that says it's not about one club, it's not about one organisation. We have an openness in the game where we get a proper independent review of what is going on, what happened.
Have we got in... I mean, what we need to know is, massive changes have been made. Are they effective? Are they good enough? Well, that's what I suspect is what they're looking at. But I mean, if you go back to that period, I mean, this wasn't just football. You know, this was so many parts of society we now discover.
Well, look at Sarpong.
Look at the church, particularly the Catholic Church. Look at the Boy Scouts movement. Look at all sorts of things of that period.
The Scouts movement has gone to enormous lengths. We better just say that.
Yes, has now gone to. I think a lot of organisations have gone to enormous lengths.
But where does responsibility lie for this, Graeme?
It's difficult because I think, obviously, the governing body has to put in place all the training, all the skills that you can give, which is effectively a massive volunteer workforce. You know, to not only protect the players, protect the coaches as well, but also help enable coaches that are working with young people look for signs of abuse from other parts of their lives.
I suspect the FA inquiry will probably say, and I'm guessing, but will probably say, look, lots has been done since the late 90s, but in the period before that, not enough was done.
Ugly. Yeah.
Well, the main thing is that those men have been brave enough to come out, and it means that other victims will be able to do the same.
Sure.
OK, so it's my turn next. This week, we saw Freddie Frintoff admit that it's taken him 38 years to figure out how to be happy. I'm 39 and I still haven't fully figured it out yet. As a country, we're able to produce world-class sports athletes, professionals, scientists, engineers and entrepreneurs. But what good is success if we're not producing young people who can deal with it, or even with setbacks for that matter? There's more pressure on children than ever before, in the real world and the virtual world. And that's why I think it's time we make mindfulness part of the national curriculum. Bickley Park School in Kent has already started 5-minute mindfulness sessions after lunch. Oh, look at them, so sweet, meditating in class. In order to give pupils the best possible start, academically and mentally. Other schools are also using meditation and breathing exercise to address discipline issues where traditional methods such as detention has failed. You can accuse me of being a tree-hugging, hippie lefty, Nick Ferrari, but I won't be able to hear you because I've created a bubble of positive energy around me.
Oh, a bit of me, I have to say, felt quite... When I thought, I've got to answer this, I thought, oh, God, I feel a bit depressed about this. And I'm not a person. I'm, many years older than you, and I think I've had a very happy life and enjoyed most of it. Yeah. But I'll accept that people aren't. Tell me, what do you mean by mindfulness?
Yes, so do you want the official definition?
No, I want your definition.
My definition. So I think, especially with social media and all of the sort of outside stimulations that people now have to deal with, we don't encourage adults, and we certainly don't encourage young people, to know how to calm down the brain and to relax in order to be able to deal with the stresses of life. And I think, so much of the data and research shows that people who meditate, 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes a day, are able to deal with life's challenges far better.
So you're talking about meditation?
Yeah, meditation, breathing, anything that calms you down.
Yeah, so yoga?
Yeah, I'm all for yoga. Yeah, but I don't even...
I recently
do you do yoga?
No, I don't. I recently went to a health farm and did yoga for a whole week, which is about twice as much as I've done for the rest of my life. And I have to say, it was quite...
Relaxing.
It's not relaxing. It's not as good as working out on a machine. I didn't think of those sorts of things. But yes, I did find it quite interesting and quite relaxing, having watched my wife do it for years and been... not always polite about it.
Yes.
The trouble is suggesting that this should be in every school. You've got to, if you want to sell it, you've got to sell it that doesn't make you look like a tree hugger.
No. Yes.
Otherwise, of the one person of all the people around here who I knew would come up with this,
it'd be me.
It would have to be you. Right? And
how would you sell it then?
Well, I wouldn't call it mindfulness to start with.
What would you call it?
I think meditation is perfectly valid. Time, and probably there's some time for some thought. For.
Do you think children need it? Because if
is it a much more stressful world today than it was?
I think so.
20
definitely.
I mean, Nick, do you think is it more stressful than it was when you were a kid?
He's got steam coming out of his ears.
Oh gosh,
right.
Here we go.
We are sadly in a country where our position in the league attainment tables is constantly slipping.
And I would say this would help that. And
we have children leaving school who can't even write or read properly. Often it's the role of the supermarkets or the stores they go to do that, and we hear the bosses say that. As for sums, they have absolutely no clue. You go to a bar and you buy a round of drinks, and it's £10.50, and you give the girl £20, or the man, I'm sorry, unless they can put it on a calculator, they haven't got a choice. Never mind mindfulness. We need multiplication. We need to go back to the 3 R's and what the hell would the class contain? Seriously.
What I would say to that is mindfulness will help with all of the
How will it help
all
a
of the
kid work
points
out
that
what
you've
to change is from £10.50 with a £20 note?
The minute a kid knows how to calm their mind down, that makes them in a much
I don't want
better
him calm.
position.
I just want £9.50
Well,
back.
it does. You want them to be calm to be able to do the arithmetic.
Nick, you've just persuaded me. I'm joined. If you think the difference is mindfulness or the 3 R's, I mean, it's just not right.
Look at countries like Singapore and their kids are soaring to the top of the tables because they have drills and they have discipline. How do you know Singaporean children are happy?
When did you last see a good play, a good book and good movie came out of Singapore?
There you go.
I didn't know that's how we judged.
No, but there are different sorts of cultures and different sorts of societies.
Yeah.
We are a creative culture.
Yes.
Always have been. We're
and
very
one of the world's leaders in that area.
I'd be interested in looking at it, but I just don't know enough about it.
OK, well, can I just, to sort of deal with Nick even more, I have a quote from the assistant head teacher of Bickley Park School. Research has shown that everything is becoming younger and younger, even to the extent of puberty starting sooner. The earlier we can teach them to spot signs when they're not quite right and be responsive to that, the better.
What does he mean by not quite
Because also
right?
there's a rise in issues around mental health in schools with young people, and all of this helps them be able to prepare for the challenges of life.
Is this? I mean, what I'm interested in is this. Because is it really changed, or is it just that that's what we recognise and we didn't recognise it?
But does it matter?
Ago?
The fact is, we know there's a problem. So how do we deal with it?
I think I must have banged my head in when I got out of bed this morning, because for once I agree with you.
Oh no, I've lost the whole place. I've lost
you. I don't know what's going on.
I haven't even had my word. I haven't said anything yet, Nick.
I completely agree with you, and I would go as far as agreeing with you to get this on the curriculum. Yeah. I think if children across the land started their day with 5 minutes of meditation... Now, I completely agree with you that these kids, they need to be learning their stuff, they need to have something about them and all the rest of it. But for me, all I want is 5 minutes, starting your day with just some calm... Just some peace, just some consideration. I think if you had that, and I will be completely honest, one of my good friends runs one of the biggest mindfulness companies globally.
And the truth is out.
This is probably where I get my viewpoint from, because I understand what they do, I appreciate what they do, and I see the value in it. And I think that
you see the results.
Yeah, but I think that we live in a world, everything is instantaneous now. So we've got Twitter, everything is faster. It's quicker. Anything that can just encourage you to just take a second just to consider your thoughts is a positive thing, and will have a positive outcome on the well side. God knows what's happened to me, but I do agree with you.
I feel... absolutely, the Guardian reader, But I actually feel that I operate, when I'm under stress, I do have to naturally take a little bit of time out. Just a few minutes, just to put things into mental boxes, to deal with the issue that I'm thinking about. We do that naturally, maybe, but not everybody does.
What the hell is going to happen to these kids when they go to the workplace?
No, because you still have to have a clear mind.
I've got to go and have my 5 minutes sit down.
I propose we need this in the workplace.
If you introduce that sort of discipline at school, I'm not saying
5 minutes, by the way. Is that
it takes up half the day. But if you have that sort of discipline when you're a child, you don't need to then take time out.
Sit in the lotus position and hum.
Nick Ferrari, as you are so against this, Michelle is suggesting 5 minutes. I'm not even going to suggest 5 minutes. I'm going to just suggest 30 seconds. Right. So I want us all to participate in a little bit of mindfulness. So can you put all your hands together like that?
No, I'm not doing it.
You have to do it!
Why is this important, though?
Because I wouldn't do it like that if I was doing it.
I'd just sit here and zone out.
We're doing it.
I have an app on my phone.
We're doing it for effect.
This is a television show. We can't have 30 minutes.
But this is 30 seconds.
The viewers might wish
Nick Ferrari, hands together.
But this is why people don't like it, because they're doing this.
Someone's going to take your picture.
No. I'll do it under the table. I promise.
Remember, you was once called a fat Buddha.
Yeah, I was called a fat Buddha.
Okay, well, close your eyes. I want you to breathe in, breathe out. Now just relax.
He's not doing it. I just seen him.
Nick.
He's still not doing it.
I think this is a waste of 30 seconds.
It's better than listening to June.
I think we should do this on your radio show quite regularly. A bit of silence would be good.
Dear.
I'm not sorry. I'm not supposed to talk.
How do we know when the 30 seconds is up?
There's about another 3 minutes.
And relax.
No
See?
discipline.
Have you got to breathe? You have to breathe through the nose and out through the mouth. Don't you?
Yes.
All that, yeah.
And how do you feel now?
Can I just give it some context, though? Because when people are talking about meditation, no disrespect, June, but I don't, because I do sometimes do this, and I don't sit there like this. I just sit quietly, close my eyes, stick my phone on silent.
Doesn't matter, whatever works for you.
No, you come from Hull.
I do.
Tell me, how do you sell mindfulness to Hull?
Well, if I went home and said to my brothers, right, come on, lads, we're going to do 5 minutes, they'd be like you.
Yeah.
If I went into a school of kids and I educated them and I said, right, guys, this is how you're starting your day, end of, you're doing it, at first, everyone's going to mess around and all the rest of it, but in time, it will become ingrained.
And I would say your brother and Nick would feel much better if they did.
I went to one retreat where the guy stood over me with a bell and going like, and I lay it down.
I can hear ringing. I can hear ringing.
How was that BBC board meeting? Well, I think the idea is distinctly ho-hum.
Very good.
You've got to hand it to them. They're not going to give up without a fight. The European overlords we have wisely voted to overthrow are coming up with a dizzying raft of ideas designed to act like a smoke grenade and mask everything and confuse everyone. Their latest wheeze is that British citizens will be able to pay a fee so they could remain European citizens after Brexit. They'd then be free to enjoy freedom of movement and work rights across the continent, and also to vote in European elections. I know, the excitement is quite heady, while the rest of us British citizens would actually respect the fact that we've voted to leave. The torturous Brexit process will have more twists and turns than an episode of House of Cards, and plenty more deceit and subterfuge too. But this is nothing more than a divisive plot hatched by a hideous cabal of European politicians, frozen like rabbits in the headlights of the oncoming destruction of their calamitous European project.
I think we have to accept that what happened during the referendum was, by definition, divisive. You know, when you've got almost a 50-50 split within the country. Almost everybody in the UK has some relationship with Europe, whether they own property, whether they go on holiday, whatever it is.
They own property. Dear God, you might very well.
Well, but there's a lot of people that, that have properties in Europe. Still, and lots of, obviously, the majority of the country would take a holiday at some point in Europe. So, effectively, what we have to do is have some relationship with Europe going forward, even though we've left. And that's going to involve some sort of health insurance if you're on holiday. And the reason I mention homeowners or people that expats that live abroad at the moment, insurance for health, property. So however this plays out, we are going to have some form of visa health card in order to access treatment when we're overseas. That's inevitable. So what I think about this is, whilst I don't necessarily agree with all of the things that you listed, we are going to have to allow people to have some European rights, given the fact that we want to interact with Europe anyway.
But hundreds of thousands of go to Florida every year, and it seems to work all right. But we have a perfectly decent relation. We don't have to have associate membership of the US, which is what this idiot is offering. Yeah, but you still have to have some paid visa or a medical insurance that covers. I think it's called. And medical insurances that cover. So isn't this just the same thing? No, it's paying. And by the way, I had the politician on my show. It was fascinating to talk to him. His name is Charles Dorrans, and he is a Luxembourgish MEP, and he's the one who's putting it forward. And it is voted for next month. Yeah. It doesn't mean it will happen, but so I asked him a couple of questions because I have a brief journalistic training. I asked him, how much is it going to cost to be an associate? We haven't got to that detail yet. OK. How long have I... And I said, I understand, because interestingly, when the idea came up, the two people who work with me at the radio station, both considerably young, both young women, I'll pay. They'll say, I'll pay. I want to stay European. I want to stay European. So I might want to go and work there. So I then said to the European politician, how long have you got to be in it to benefit from it? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, say I want to set up a business in south of France, right? Have I got to have paid my associate membership for 1 year? 5 years? So we haven't looked at that either. This is what these Europeans... They have these mad, fanciful ideas that they will spend tens of thousands of euros debating, and they're just not practical, Graham.
They're just not practical. I deeply resent the fact that 52% of the people in this country can take away... Not even of the people, 52% of those who voted can take away my European citizenship.
So you'd pay this?
I'd pay this.
Oh, in a heartbeat.
Look, you look at the number of people who have tried to become Irish in the months since the referendum because they want to be Irish. Why? Because they want to stay, they want a European passport, and they want to be European.
What have you lost, Greg?
What have I lost? I've lost... Oh, I'm not a little Englander.
No, hang on.
Which is what,
tell me what
I think you all are.
Don't tell me what you're not. What have you lost?
What have I lost? I want to be European. I want freedom of movement around Europe. For me,
you still show your passport when you go to France?
No,
yes, you do.
Sure, it's a European passport. I don't stand in the other queue.
But you won't. Once you're in Europe with Schengen, you'll just sail... there are no borders.
Yes, no...
So don't worry, so we've solved that. What else have you done?
What else?
Nick, it's an emotional attachment. I am European before I'm British. Right? I want to be European.
Why? What's the problem with being British?
That's my choice. I've no problem. I'm British as well. I like being British. I'm not so sure I won't like being English, but...
That's for another week.
Right, that's for another week. But I just believe that if I want to... I object to the fact that you can have taken away my European citizenship.
Can I say, and I completely agree with Greg on this one, and I find it so weird, Nick, the last sort of 3 weeks or whatever, you've always had some European topic just bashing Europe, and you're usually going on about me, going on and on about Europe, and you're doing it.
That's a fair point.
You are like one of these Trump supporters who are complaining that Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. What are you moaning about? You won. We're leaving the EU. And so what if there is a system that allows those of us that wanted to stay to still be able to benefit? Well...
It's divisive.
But it is anyway,
isn't it? It is anyway.
The bottom line is, the whole...
So your missus is a European citizen and you're associate... I mean, that's nothing but...
Nick,
that allows for choice.
Just won. You only just won.
But you won.
48% of the people who voted wanted to remain European citizens.
That's the way the referendum worked,
What is your problem with this?
I think what you're talking about here, this is like, it's an associated EU citizenship. That's what they're talking about, allowing you to purchase. But to me, I understand kind of all perspectives of this, but it's not going to work. It's not going to get off the ground. It's kind of like, how can you be a citizen of a country that you're not affiliated to or a part of? And I understand what you're saying. You might resent all of us that voted Brexit. You know that I voted that way myself. But we all had a choice and we all could vote like that. So, number one, I don't think this is going to happen for so many reasons, because you can't just... When I go on holiday, if I go on holiday, I have travel insurance to cover me.
Yeah, but at the moment in Europe, you have a European card that means that if you get ill whilst you're in Europe, you get healthcare that our health card covers.
Yes, because
so
I'm
then
in the EU,
the prices will
and
go
we're
up.
not going to be in the EU.
If everyone has to have insurance to travel anywhere outside the UK, it will go up. So however you do it, there's going to be an extra cost and extra barriers put in place. So whether you do it through this suggestion or whether you just do it through a standard visa and health insurance, it's going to change.
But you regarded yourself as European before you... No, hang on. You regarded yourself as European before British, and I found that fascinating. Why are you like... Because it sounds like you're almost... not ashamed, but you're angry to be regarded as British as opposed to European.
No, I'm not angry to be regarded as British. I am British, but I'm also European.
And don't confuse the European... I love Europe, but don't confuse being European with the European Union.
The problem is that's the emotional position that I'm in, and I think loads of people... I meet loads of people like me who feel that what you did, what you Brexiteers did, is you stole our European citizenship.
No, we didn't steal anything. We exercised the choice.
Which is why you shouldn't have a problem with this.
So why do you have a problem with it?
Because you will... we won't... Look, chances are we won't have single market.
You want everybody to be like you.
Yeah.
Well, the world would be a better place. Whether I can attain it through the pledge is going to be damn hard work.
I think that if the world was like that, it would be mass emigration.
I think it just for me, it's just not going to get off the ground. It's a non-starter. I don't understand how you could even create that system.
It might well be. You might be right, but emotionally, I'm there. Anyway, it's my turn next, and I'll be playing you something I guarantee you've never seen before. It's time to ask the public whether they would pay a national health tax. The Chancellor of the Exchequer is under attack yet again for not giving more money to the health service in last week's autumn statement. But I think it's time for a more radical approach on health. As a country, we all know we can't meet the ever-growing demand for free healthcare without paying more. And it seems no politician is ever going to ask us all to pay more tax to meet that demand. Instead, they say this.
The NHS will always be free for everyone under a Conservative government.
A Labour plan to rescue our NHS.
Investing an extra £10 billion in the NHS.
We will defend it to the end of our days.
When they should be saying this.
We need
to pay a National Health Service
tax.
What was that? Do it again.
We need to
pay a National Health Service
tax.
I think we need to have a referendum, believe it or not, on whether we should introduce a health tax that rises significantly in line with demand. It's a simple question for a simple issue. Let's ask the public, are they willing to pay more for a better health service? If they say yes, fine. If they say no, then at least we know that the majority are not prepared to put their money where their mouth is.
OK, so I use the NHS. I think it's a fabulous institution and I want it to remain. Would I pay more money for it if that's what was required? Yes, I would. However, I would only put money into a system that I knew was as effective and as efficient as it possibly could be. And the problem that I have with the NHS at the moment, I understand it's underfunded. I understand that one of those reasons is because we're living so much longer than we used to. We make bad lifestyle choices, so I understand the challenges. But I still struggle with the amount of waste that goes on in the NHS. So do I want to chuck money into something that will potentially be wasted? No, I don't. I want to see technology being used much, much better in the NHS, which would make cost savings. I want to make sure that the only people that are using the NHS are those people that are absolutely entitled to use it. I want to see things like joined-up procurement and things like that to save money.
But answer the question. If we had a health tax, say it's 5p in the pound of our... or
I will answer your question very clearly.
The question is, when you are asked, would you pay more so that we can have a better health service, you're going to still have all those inefficiencies because something of that size will always be there.
No, my answer to that is, will I give you more money today for the NHS as it is today? No, I won't. Will I request for you to fix the NHS inefficiencies and then I pay more? Absolutely, yes, I will.
But how do you ever know whether it's been fixed? Actually, all the studies suggest that the NHS is actually quite an effective and cheap way of providing healthcare.
I'll very briefly.
It drives us all nuts at times.
But let me very briefly tell you some things that I would do. So, for example, one of my bestest friends, they think that she may have cancer at the moment. We are going through such a long-winded process for a diagnosis. We went back the other day to get some results. And here's my thing. We had to go into the hospital, we had to sit, we had to wait, we had to have like a 5-minute conversation with this guy where he read some stuff to us. Point number one that I would do is I'd introduce technology. So I would make, I don't know, like Skype or video consultations. I would do that. I would introduce charges for missed appointments. I would do centralised procurement. I would look at the staffing and the agency costs. So those are the things that are quite simple that I would start with.
I once spent a year wandering around the National Health Service to come up with a report on the patient's charter. And actually, I mean, those sorts of things. I mean, missed appointments. Do you know whether the reason most people miss appointments? They forget about them.
Yeah.
Why? Because they're old and they got the appointment 6 months ago and were told to come then. You could easily do things like that. But that's not the big money.
That's what I was going to say.
That's not the big money. You can do... You know, I agree with you about people coming from overseas just to use the health service. I agree with that. You don't... You know... But that's still not the big money. The truth is, the demand is forever growing, and we as a society have a choice. Do we want to pay
and we're living
more?
Longer.
But then or do we not? And what I'm saying is, I think we should define the health service as something separate from the rest of taxation and say there is a tax that pays for the health service. Now, make up your mind. Do you want to pay more, or do you accept that you're not going to get as good a service as you've had?
Surely the point is, though, is that if it's a bottomless pit, that it doesn't matter how much money you put in, it still doesn't do what everybody expects it to do, then something fundamental has to change, because ultimately, how much money, if this is a one-off tax, and you're saying 5% effectively, 5p
No,
in a pound.
I'm saying, I suspect, well, at the moment we spend roughly 5p in every pound.
OK, how much, I don't know what the figures are, but I don't know how much that would raise. But when
5p would, I think 5p and a bit more on the top rates would pay for what we've got now. Then you say, OK, are we prepared? I'm all for asking the public, are you really prepared to pay more to get a better service?
But then it just plugs the gap, doesn't it, for another... It's another sort of paper over the crack. If the fundamentals are wrong...
So if you want to change the fundamentals, you've got to start again. You've then got to go back to...
But no politician's brave enough to stand up and actually change it.
No, because the NHS is seen as a religion in this country.
It's a vote. It's
He's going to explode in a minute.
Come on, Nick.
Go on, Nick.
We already pay it. It's called national insurance.
No, it's not a...
We are paying for it. And I do like you. I really like you. I am
thanks for that.
staggered by how out of touch you are.
It's not a thing that worries me whether I like you or not at all.
Good answer.
So I'm not sure I really want you to like me.
I am staggered by how out of touch you are. And I know for us we can blithely say another 5p in the pound, blah, blah, blah. There are people out there, the just about managings, who are derogatorily referred to as the jams. I hate that. Who are one missed paycheck away from total financial wipeout.
I agree with that.
The car blows up, the boiler goes, the fridge breaks, they won't have a Christmas. But the idea to ask them to pay more tax, you are so far removed from real people.
Fine, then stop complaining that the health service isn't good enough.
Michelle is right.
No,
Michelle is right.
Efficiencies would save
I want to
some
stop
of it.
hiring agency nurses. I want to stop paying people, bosses, twice what the Prime Minister earns. It wasn't that long ago that we had more managers than beds. We renew company cars for these
This is all the old figures. In the end...
This is spending £2 billion
So you think you could save billions...
Yes, on a budget of 116, yes.
You've learned this from your radio show, have you?
No, not at all. No, I would
how do you think you know how to do it?
I would get people like Justin King, who used to run Sainsbury's. I'd get someone like Terry Leahy, who used to run Tesco. They know the value of a pound because they make a pound.
But you can make it
up. But that's a whole different
But what we know is
game.
we've got obesity, we've got an ageing population, but really what we've got is more and more expensive drugs.
Well, I'd make
that are being developed that are great for society.
And an ageing society as well.
So let's assume that it is going to cost you more. And what I'm saying is, let's define it.
People say it's national insurance.
They can't
Greg,
afford it,
Nick.
Greg.
Until we join up lifestyle and health, until we properly join that up through the provision for sport at school, for people having outdoor spaces to play in. Until we join that up, I don't think any of this is going to touch us up. We have to. No, I mean, I did that on gamification about creating a more positive environment where people get rewarded for looking after themselves. Now, we as people have to own our health. We have to take responsibility for our health, because if not, the burden is just going to continue to make the system creak.
Who works in the health service or involved with the health service basically say, look, there needs to be more money. Now, if there needs to be more money, how do we pay for it? If we choose as a society we're not going to do it, then we have to do something radically different with the way the health service works.
Because you can afford it, my love. You can afford it. Other people can't. They are bouncing on the bottom. They are just about managing. They will be watching this if they can afford to watch it with their head in their hands. Please don't make me pay more tax. They can't. It's not. The money's not there.
I'll then put it on the top rate. You can pay it then.
I can pay it.
But is that going to make it... Are there enough people on the top?
I'm not going to pay the whole country.
All I'm saying is... No, there's 2 stages to this. The first of all is you've got to define how much we're spending on the health service and make it into a health tax, so we all know. Because it's not... national insurance isn't all of it.
Well, why don't we ring-fence something that we're already paying?
So we have a hypothecated tax and say... Of your income tax, of your current income tax, 25% goes to the health service, right? And we'll say, right, that's the health tax. And then...
Bang goes the defence budget.
That doesn't cost any more. That doesn't cost any more.
This is going to rumble on and on and on.
It is.
I most certainly think that I'm right. Fix the system first, and when it's fixed, if it needs more money, I'll gladly pay. Anyway, I'm next, and I will be telling you all about one of my first jobs. And I was the fastest checkout girl in the North East. Theresa May has been accused of betraying workers by watering down her promise to put employees on company boards. It's true. She now says she won't force companies to do it, but that workers will still be represented. In this case, rowing back is the right thing to do. Business is often complicated, and I've worked at every level, starting as a checkout girl, working my way up right through to the top and consulting on the boards of FTSE 100 companies. Whilst companies must listen to and, of course, respect their employees, forcing them to put workers on the board is the wrong move. Often, the strategic direction of a company is sensitive and will involve change. If I, as a checkout girl, was on the board, I would most certainly have voted to avoid the introduction of self-checkouts. Sometimes, tough decisions need to be made to allow businesses to be competitive and to allow them to survive. On this issue, I applaud Mrs May for having the courage to backtrack.
Hello, Michelle. I'm quite surprised that you think that. I would have thought you were somebody who would actually agree with having all levels of the business represented at a board level.
I recognise and understand and see the value in all levels of stakeholders within a business having their interests heard and understood by the board. I think any business that disregards their employees, their customers, their suppliers are foolish. But mandating an organisation to force those employees onto the board, I think, will be counterproductive as opposed to productive. I think that you can listen to employees' views in various different ways, whether it's representation groups, works councils. There's so many different ways that you can do it. And I'm not saying, don't misunderstand me, don't think I'm saying employees' views don't matter. That's not what I'm saying.
But you don't believe they belong in the boardroom?
No, putting them on the board will, I think, slow down decisions. It will create conflicts of interests in various different cases. And I've worked on significant business transformation programmes, and this is what's formed my view, because I think if you put those employees on the board and involve them in those first initial decision-making, it would really slow things down.
But don't you... Sorry.
She said this just before she became party leader.
Yeah, actually, we've got a clip. Can we see the clip
Absolutely.
first? She made this promise before she became leader and again at Tory party conference. Let's have a look.
Too often, the people who are supposed to hold big business accountable are drawn from the same narrow social and professional circles as the executive team. And too often, the scrutiny they provide is not good enough. A change has got to come. So later this year, we will publish our plans to have not just consumers represented on company boards, but workers as well.
Wow, a politician backtrack?
Yeah,
Never.
but why? But what's her motive? Why did she say that in the first place and then back down? Because it's
Well,
a pretty.
I think,
the argument's not a complicated
but I
one.
think
You've set it out, and actually, if it's not appropriate to have everybody represented at board level, why would you suddenly change your mind?
But you've got to look at when that happened and why she said that. You know, this was straight after Brexit, and I think when you look at the problems that we've had in terms of the growing levels of income inequality, the fact that wages have stagnated, I think it's all of those reasons why a Theresa May would suggest something like this. And actually, don't you think, Michelle, there is a real disconnect between the top and the bottom? And that's part of what's causing all the problems we have at the moment. So this is a way of making sure that there's a level conversation, because at the moment, if it's just, sort of dealing with the unions in their space, there's still a kind of top-down approach, whereas if somebody is a valid board member...
But there always has been a top-down approach, surely.
You've been on more boards than still...
approach is working.
Right. What I want to know is your view.
I must have been on 20... I agree with her. I must have been on 20 boards, right? Yeah. And including a board in Germany where there was another board that had the workers.
Yeah, they have a two-tier system, just for those people that don't know.
The trouble is, once you start... And this is the problem with the FA board. Why the FA board doesn't work very effectively is that they're all there representing someone else. Instead of being independent and making proper decisions for the interests of the whole game, they're actually representing the Premier League, the Football League... the counties, and that's the real problem, and they've got a majority. But the moment you put a workers' representative on the board, what's going to happen is that the board will meet somewhere else.
Will split.
Yeah. They'll meet somewhere else. The decisions will be taken somewhere else.
Bad luck, Greg. You and I agree. For the first time in the series, I think.
The decisions will be taken somewhere else. Therefore, no, it's perfectly valid, I think, to say we want an independent non-executive director whose job it is to make sure the workers' views are represented and talks to all sorts of people. I think that's a really good idea. But I think the idea of having an elected member, probably a trade unionist on the board, is that all they'll do is they'll look at where their electorate, what's their electorate and how do they keep them happy, and that's not the job of a board.
And also, if you're trying to deal with issues of pay gap and the disparity between the haves and the have-nots, then what you have to do is you have to deal with that issue specifically. You don't do it in a round-the-houses way and then backtrack on it.
I would argue that happens when everybody is at an equal position and you have a constant flow of dialogue.
I couldn't better Greg, and I don't wish to... I think your example was a very good one because you never would get automated checkouts, checkout number 1 or whatever they're called, if you'd gone up as someone who was working on that. And the other thing, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, there will be so much held at a level that they possibly won't know. You know, a reverse takeover, directors' emoluments, they'll probably call for the ointment. They won't know necessarily what they're talking about. So I just don't think it works for anybody.
Anything
just accept it, June. You're taking a beating over this one. You're being beaten like a rented mule over this one. You are losing and losing big time.
I think the workers would agree with me.
No, I'm not sure they would, because if the only way you can be on the board is you're elected by a certain constituency, you then are answerable to that constituency.
What about...
Therefore, you're not an independent board director at all.
What about looking at selecting staff members to then train to become potential board members, board ready?
Which is what happens, you know.
To then introduce them to boards, having had that experience.
Yes. But then the argument will be, are they elected? Do they come from the trade unions, or are they chosen by the management? You've got to be very careful. I mean, one of the jobs of the board is to hold the management to account.
Yeah.
And actually, where I think boards have failed in this country, certainly in terms of money, is they haven't. They've actually said,
that's a good point.
They should have held them greater to account. So the remuneration committee should be quite tough on the management, which it's not in an awful lot of companies.
Just quickly, do you think that we should stick with our unitary single-tier board system, or do you think we should move more to 2 tiers, like a Germany, for example?
No, I think the board system works quite well as long as they are independent and that the management doesn't control it.
That's it for this week. Make sure you get in touch on Twitter to tell us all the ways that I won my argument. And we'll take your comments to the Pledge Executive Board. See you next time.